Okay, so now we know what a basic pattern of here would look like. So we'll take a different example over here. Maybe we'll go one level above also to be able to understand better. So the next set of pattern that you may be asked to print, and another very popular pattern problem is this. For example, if n is equal to 3, this should be your output, okay? And for example, I give you n is equal to 5. So I'm taking a very big example. Over here. This would be the output, okay? So this is the problem statement over here. Again, our objective while solving this problem will be the same as it was earlier, by always trying to create a grid around it as much as we could. And always start the grid from the very first star only, okay? Some people tend to try to directly make a grid from here like this. That's wrong. Okay, now a new thing in this problem is that you have spaces in every row also, and then stars. Okay, don't account for these, I would say, spaces, because they're after the star, so they would never be actually printed, or they will never be actually shown. Now see, let's again try to make some generalization. First of all, again, the total rows over here is also equal to n. If the value of n is 3, you see in the input and the output also there are 3 rows, okay? The second thing is, right, you have some stars first to print. You first have some spaces to print, and followed by that you have the stars to print. Okay, it's not like first you have stars and then you have spaces. You first have to print some spaces, some certain set of spaces, and then you have to print some certain set of stars. Okay, all right. Now if I go for the very first row, right, what you will see is you have 2 spaces, okay, and then I have 1 star over here. Okay, so, and in the next pattern also, to be able to generalize this pattern, what you will see over here is that for the very first row, you have 4 spaces and then you have 1 star. So, for the very first row, the number of stars is always constant. It is 1. Okay, in the first row, no matter what the value of n is, you will only have 1 star. But for the spaces, it will be n minus 1. Okay, for this pattern, for row 1, you have 2 spaces, which is equal to n minus 1. And for this case over here, for this case over here, for row 1, you have 4 spaces, which is equal to n minus 1 spaces. Okay, so that is a generalizing pattern over here. And for every next row that you go for, you decrease the star by 1. That means initially if there are 4 stars in the next spaces, in the next row you will only have 3 spaces, then 2 spaces with 1 spaces, and then 0 space. So for every next row that you go for, you have to prep accordingly, that the number of spaces basically decrease, right? And for every next row that you go to, in terms of stars, you can see here there was 1 star, then it was 3, then it was 5, then it was 3, 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9. So you're always doing plus 2 from the previous number of stars in the previous row. Okay, so these are a few generalizing patterns that we can see over here. Now let's try to write the code for this as well. So this is pattern 2. Again, we go by the simple idea. Let's say int n is equal to 4, right? Int total rows over here would be equal to n. Okay, and what you will do is you will again define a going for each and every row. So you start with the very first row, and total number of rows would be t rows, and then you do row plus plus. Now over here, we will also define the generalizing formula for initial number of stars and spaces. Okay, so first we have the spaces. We start with the initial set of spaces, which is always n minus 1, and the initial set of stars for the very first row is always 1. Okay, now what you do is you always first prep for the current row. Okay, or you work for the current row, and then you prep for the next row. In the current row, first you have to do the work of spaces, then you have to do the work of stars. Okay. Now for the work of spaces, what you do is you just have to print n minus 1 spaces. This is equal to this, right? So for int CSP, count of spaces is equal to 1. And how many spaces do you print? As many spaces in this value. Okay, and then you do CSP plus plus. Okay, now you work similarly for stars, right? So this is int CST equal to 1. CST is less than equal to the total number of stars that is being given. Okay, and what do you do over here is you simply go ahead and print the star. Okay, and how do you prep for the current row? I already told you that for when you are in the current row, what do you do is first of all you have to take the cursor for the next row, and then after that the spaces decrease by 1. So initially the spaces were n minus 1, but now the spaces would be minus minus. The value will decrease by 1. So if you initially printed 3 spaces because the value of n was 4, now for the next row when you are prepping, make sure the value of spaces has been reduced by 1. So the value of spaces should now be 2 from 3, and the stars increase by 2. So the value of stars should increase by 2. Initially the number of stars was 1, but when you prep for the next row, make sure you increase the value of stars by 2. And there you go. You have your absolutely beautiful pattern over here. Now maybe try to run it for smaller and bigger patterns also, just that you make sure that your code has been generalized for any kind of input. Okay. Always and always remember the trick. The trick is to create a grid around it so that it helps for your quick, easy generalizations. Okay. And always follow the same idea. Define the total number of rows. For the first row, define the total number of spaces and the stars. Preferably try to use as generalized formula as you could, and then for every row do the work for the current row, whatever you have to print, right? Sometimes it could be stars first and then spaces after that, or the vice versa. Do according to that and then prep for the next row. For the next row, we were decreasing spaces by 1, and when we were increasing stars by 2. So make sure that kind of a pattern is being reflected in your code as well. And trust me, this kind of a generalized code works for almost all the cases. Okay. So I hope this next pyramid kind of a structure is also clear to everyone. Thank you.